Today I'd like to talk about something that's so very important to our students, but it's also something that's overlooked or sometimes assumed that may just occur through the PhD process, and it may not be formally recognized in the curricula that we have for our doctoral students. And this is, of course, academic writing and latterly peer review. This subject is quite important for us in academia, as the ability to write and argue your ideas, your findings and your conclusions, of course, is an important part of your PhD. But it's also important later in our academic lives, where the writing of books and other articles is a principal form of communication and new research. So our different faculties that we come together here at this colloquium, well, we have different focus or foci for our writing. Some of us who are more scientific or more technical, we may be writing in mainly journal articles, but others who are producing work in the social science, we may be writing books and book chapters. And so all of these things are part of academic writing, and we're producing our knowledge and communicating this knowledge in this form of academic writing. But as I indicated before, this aspect of PhD teaching is often left to chance, or we expect the students to learn informally through us as assessors. And this is a problem for producing good PhD theses, as large pieces of writing that the student is producing, this may be the first time they have actually come across this, or it may be the largest piece of work that they've ever done. And this can be a challenge for our students. And so we can see here that the literature supports this idea of the importance of academic writing for our doctoral students. And these two quotes here really show us that a focus on academic writing is necessary for us. I mean, these data are especially relevant for non-native speakers who may be undertaking PhDs as international students in second and possibly even third languages. And so we need to be thinking about how are our students communicating in the written form their ideas and their findings. And so we're expecting our PhD students at the end of their journey to have an expert and up-to-date knowledge of their area of study, producing research that is relevant to their particular topic, and able to communicate their theses by writing in a succinct, clear, and error-free manner. And so the goal of what we're trying to achieve with our students is about this. And as I said before, maybe we're leaving it sometimes a little bit to chance. So what I've done here is, let's take a short poll. I've had the crew put a poll here for us. And so what I'll do is I'll just launch this poll here for you to have a look at. And I'm just wondering that if you could just read it there. The question is, which of the following best describes your PhD program's approach to academic writing? I also put this on the WOVA for you to have a look at. Let's fill this in. Let's take a few seconds here, 30 seconds or so, to answer one of those options. To pick the option that you think fits you best, and we'll see how we're going here in terms of what opportunities there are for students for academic writing in your courses. And so what we see here is around about 30% have required formal classes, around about 35% have required workshops or seminars. So these aren't part of the course themselves in terms of credits. And then we have optional, we have 17 and another 17 optional workshops is part here. So we can see a relatively wide spread of how doctoral programs are dealing with this issue of writing, but it's good to see that we have a strong need there of required workshops or required formal classes for writing. That's 65% of our students. Let's just park these here, and we'll come back to them and look at this right at the end as well, when we have a look at some conclusions. So, I mean, one of the first things that I want to discuss with you here after that survey is that the reason why we shouldn't be leaving academic writing to chance is really that authoring or this writing is more than just the drafting and composition. And Dunleavy here in this quote is really describing what he calls the writing in academic text to be authoring. And so when we're asking our students to complete their PhD theses, we're not only asking them to pick a topic, research it, discover more about that topic, present their results, we're also asking them to be able to communicate all of those ideas through this range of activities that we're providing here. And this provides the whole sequence of activities that academic writing is part of. And so we can see here the principal tasks that Dunleavy indicates that constitute authoring. And so we see that the writing or drafting is the middle, and stuck there in the middle of two separate parts. The first, which is thinking about the plan, the structure, and its content, while following the drafting is the important role of reviewing and finishing the text in itself. So Dunleavy then, following on, reiterates the importance of the concept of authoring to the PhD student, and that a well-written thesis communicates the student's ideas, positions, concepts, methods, results, and the implications of these results, which are critical for the student's overall success. So we can see that Dunleavy credits a significant amount of a student's success to the quality of their writing. And what Dunleavy is also saying here, that a very high level of authoring skills is needed to produce and structure this amount of ordered text that is an academic thesis. We also see Paltridge and Starfield backing up that quote, stating that high quality authoring is clearly needed by students. Now, this is a challenge for us because there's only, there are still a large number of us who are still leaving some of this up to chance with optional type courses. So what's the challenge for us? And so what I'd like to be able to do to illustrate this challenge is maybe move away from writing just for a little bit and enter into the world of art and use this as an example that we can learn from, and then perhaps think about how we can apply academic writing to our classes. So here, of course, is Claude Monet's 1900 work, Lilies in the Garden, one of the first Impressionist paintings that Monet produced. It was an early piece, and it showcases the techniques that Monet was now producing and bringing into the art world here, very different from the traditions of landscape and portrait painting of the time. And we can see that Monet is using strong colors and bold short strokes, brush strokes. He's not mixing colors, which was quite different from what many art lovers were familiar with at the time. And so Monet, over his painting career, is producing work. He's using a set of techniques that he repeats, using different subjects. Here's Lilies in the Garden, but he also did portraits and other paintings of different landscapes as well. But each time he applies this new work, he's falling back on what he has learned previously from the previous paintings, and he's developing and mastering the brushstroke and colors, the placement of light, and the impressions that he is seeing of the subjects that he's painting. And so his style is experimenting with light and shadow changes through a single day, bringing this new art form to the public's view in that time. So what can we learn from Monet, his experience and the works that he produced? We know that Monet was producing a new tech, or providing a new technique to art, much like our students would be when they're starting to apply writing to academic texts. And like art lovers who first saw Monet's work, our students are mostly unfamiliar with writing large blocks of text and producing text for an academic audience. And so as such, their PhD thesis is the largest and most complicated piece of writing that the student may have attempted, and it's in a new and unfamiliar form for them here. And so from the outset, we're expecting our students to be able to present, argue, and discuss their ideas within the thesis. And thus, they must be successful at being able to communicate these ideas and write in a way that evidences the hard work that they're putting into both their research and the communication of that research. Now, as we know, academic writing has a particular style and sets of techniques, and this is why I've used the art example as well, because once we can learn these styles and techniques, we can then repeat them, we can learn patterns, and we can have some habits. And so the good thing is that our students can actually learn some of these patterns and habits for academic writing. And with practice, students will develop confidence. They'll develop their own voice and comfort in writing of further academic texts. And so often when we meet our students, we'll assume that they're capable of authoring, perhaps considering to provide them the tools, or developing skills is something that we think about. But also importantly, we need to be able to provide them with the opportunity to create these habits of writing for a career of writing academically. And so as Monet came up with the idea of painting in this way, and he learned and applied this, we can use this example as a way that we can think about approaching and supporting our students to write academically. Now, secondly, part of writing is knowing who your audience is. And so we're asking our students to write in a manner that we want people to be able to want to read their work, to start and continue reading. That is, we're asking our students to produce accessible knowledge. And so a key question for a student when they're writing is, who will be reading my thesis? Now we can see here from the list, there's a range of people there. And so having a student look for broad-based writing, this is a skill which pays dividends. It helps a student to improve their writing style, improve their writing skills, and will make their work more interesting and accessible. And we can see here that if we're focusing just on those top two, the PhD supervisor, assessor, or the examiners, I mean, a thesis may not have widespread appeal. It may not be picked up by other audiences like faculty and research readers. But importantly, a student who chooses this narrow PhD supervisor and examiner focus or audience may also be producing poor quality work, because this narrow work usually produces theses that tend not to be read again because they're dense and unappealing. And the student was writing for this very narrow audience, trying to please that group, and it wasn't an accessible work that other people would enjoy. What happens with those theses is that they tend to be read, the reader starts and then just gives up. And lastly, I just want to touch on this last part of authoring that Dunleavy picked up on, that it's more than just planning and writing, it's also review and revision. Now, review and revision is a skill that's not only that we need to impart into students. It's not only be able to review their own work, but be able to develop a habit of review and reflection that they can apply on other people's work as well, because review is an important part of how we share and produce knowledge for the wider audience. So having students being able to participate in review processes in our classrooms means that they can begin this habit, and we can prepare students for an academic life where review is an essential part of knowledge production and to communicate. And many of the students who will be presenting here, you would have placed your proposals there and then received from review some feedback. And through conference presentations, journals, and book chapters, we get this feedback so we can improve our work, improve the knowledge that we can be presenting to people. And so students, as we know, or PhD students in particular, learn by doing. They experience academic activities, such as critically reviewing literature, presenting an argument at seminars, presenting an idea to see if it works in practices in colloquia like this here, but they're also receiving expert feedback from which they can improve on what they have written. So to achieve this, we want to create critical readers as well as critical writers. In essence, we want to create a self-critical writer. So to produce the self-critical writer, we're asking our students to be able not only to read and assess the text, but it's in a way that they haven't done before, to examine and to question the text that they have written, to come to a realization that it could be made better or it could be made clearer. And so they're going through the self process, but they're also then receiving external feedback as well. And so we want to create the self-critical writer as from our PhD students, so they have the awareness of the skills and processes that they can apply in everyday academic life for writing, but also for review as well. And so to create this writer, we must expose and adopt stances that enable students to reflect and ask questions of the text themselves. And we can see here these two questions that come up for students as asking when they're reviewing their text, why is this material here? Why does this relate? Or how does this relate to us? These are critical questions. And it's not only just looking at the answers in a descriptive or superficial level. What we need to do is to have our students think by taking a frame of mind or direction to achieve this. And so what I've done here is I've developed a word cloud from Paulson and Wallace's description, or Wallace and Paulson's, sorry, description of what it takes for students to become self-critical readers and writers. And so applying these in the first instance for students can be quite difficult. They're not experienced in this type of exercise, and so therefore we need to give them some help. And this is where the use of rubrics or guidelines to assist students to learn these habits and methods of review can be very helpful for them. So the use of rubrics and faculty modeling has been found in research to assist students to develop a stronger understanding of how constructive feedback works. And so if we clearly give students guidance in this area, they're then able, as peers in their doctoral cohort, to support the other students as well and not be frightened by this prospect of review. And by giving them these rubrics, they can then apply them to their own work, but also apply them to other people's work as well. So these rubrics and guides, of course, are familiar to us, many of the professors here, because we're publishing regularly, and these rubrics and guides are on the websites of the journals that we're submitting to. And if we're being asked to be reviewers as well, we will also have these rubric guides given to us by the editors, or asked for us to follow for the editors, to ensure that the editors receive all of the feedback that they need to make that publishing decision. So let's reflect back on our poll, and we saw that there were a few of you, about 65%, having formal courses, but there was a few of you there who were still could have needed or had outside programs operating there. And so without a formal program, what else can we do to enhance these reading, writing, and reviewing skills with our students? Now, there are a number of online resources, and I just went through a number of publishers here, and here's our partner organization, Emerald, and they have some how-to guides there on authoring, editing, and reviewing. And so we can direct students to these, and these are short modules or articles that will help students to think about these issues for them. And then we also have, here's one from Sage, and they have in their method space a communicating research section, which also has some short guides, some videos, and some articles about reviewing as well. And then lastly, what we also have is Elsevier as well, and they have some guides there as part of their Researcher Academy as well, and they have a self-tutorial or some films and some programs so that you can get a little credit certificates as well through. And so what we also have is these types of supports that we can blend in and use as part of our doctoral writing programs, or to support students or direct students to some of these resources that are online as well. Now, these are in English. Unfortunately, there aren't as many in Spanish as we would possibly like, and that could be something that maybe we need to be encouraging some of these journal providers to be able to put some of these support things into Spanish as well, for students to be able to broaden their skills where we have writing. Now, these sites are relatively narrowly focused, but they will help students in terms of supporting them and helping them build those skills and habits that we can then support in the classroom as well. So where does this all leave us? Well, hopefully what I've been able to do is reinforce with you the importance of academic writing and review skills for our PhD programs. Indeed, at ESAN, what we've done for our doctoral program is we formalized a 3-credit academic writing course, and that happens very early on in the students' part of the PhD program. And so we've endeavored to link these lessons in the course with other courses as well. And so we're sharing rubrics of how we want the students to be reviewing work or producing work as well, and sharing that across faculty. And so faculty are aware of what writing tasks that other courses are providing, and therefore trying to get this building of these writing habits and strengthening of these writing and reviewing skills throughout the course. Now, as we saw in the poll, there was a high rate of formal courses. So many of you have considered the strengthening of academic writing, but there was still a group of you there that may need to be thinking maybe a little bit more of how you could strengthen academic writing, leaving it less to chance and more programmatic within your courses as well. Because as we saw, this is an essential part of a student's success, 40 to 50%, according to Dunleavy. So what I've also done here in my slides is I've put some references and book lists, and what I'll do, hopefully these slides will be available to you to be able to have a look. And these are some of the resources that I'm using in the academic writing course at ESAN. And what we're trying to do is having that theoretical background for them, but also a lot of practical activities as well, using writing resources such as Harvey and Zemek and Rumisek there as well. And so what I'm hoping here is this short introduction to this doctoral colloquium has helped you think about academic writing, helped think about how do we present our ideas, how are we communicating our ideas for our doctoral thesis, so that people will read that and use it, and that our contribution to knowledge will be as strong as we possibly can make it. So on that note, I'll close and hand back to Jose Antonio for a continuation of the session. Thank you very much.